when this thing moved. How'd you do that, Alice? On the last one, you had it so it would move. Maybe it's this one. Okay. Okay, well, welcome this afternoon. I want to make sure that those that are online can hear us. Commissioner Ainge, can you hear us? And we want to make sure you can speak too.
I can.
Very good. Okay, we will start then with our Board of County Commissioners meeting. As always, we start with a prayer, reading, or thought. And we have a volunteer. Linda Walton has volunteered. She's a chaplain, Utah Valley Interfaith. So she has volunteered to do that. Are there any volunteers for leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. Linda.
Please pray with me. Our dear Father in heaven, we are so grateful to be able to even do this. There are many places on this planet that won't allow this meeting, that won't allow us to gather together. And so, Father, we are so grateful for that, for our country, for our state, for our county, for our cities. And Father, we pray today that your Spirit will be here, that you will bring wisdom, because there are so many issues, Father, and so many things to decide. And we just need to have your wisdom to know what to do. Father, we pray also for our community. We know there are people that maybe are hungry or don't have a job or don't have a home, who are sick. We pray that you'll be with each one of them, because that's why we're here, to help take care of them. And Father, we are so grateful again for being here. We pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, before we get to our regular agenda to build our to build our agenda, first we're going to start with a recognition. Commissioner Ainge.
Yes, so we have the Employee of the Month, really the Employee of the Quarter in 2020. That is Lori Barber. And unfortunately for Lori, I'm going to have to give her this statement that all of her colleagues, supervisors, people who she leads, wrote in the nomination. It's so long that I'll only read a small portion. Lori Barber may just be the ultimate perfect employee. She is responsible for approximately 50% of the staff at Utah County Health Department. In her role as Division Director of Family and Personal Health, Lori is motivated, dedicated, dependable, and committed. These qualities are necessary when it comes to overseeing diverse organizations such as the Immunization Clinic, the Wellness Clinic, the School Nursing Program, the Epidemiology Program, the Home Visitation Programs, and the Tuberculosis Clinic. Lori began at the Health Department back in 1985. She began her Health Department career as a school nurse, then moved to Bureau Director of Immunizations, and then went on to be the Divisional Director for Family and Personal Health. And that's really it. There's a few things here. Lori is the glue that sticks us all together, said one of her colleagues. Lori is firm, will stand up for what she believes and follow all the rules, so we are all in compliance with all policies and procedures. She is always available, even when it's on weekends, after work hours, or early in the morning. And it just goes on, and so I'll leave it at that. So congratulations to you, Lori.
Lori, come on up. And while you're coming on up, you should turn around.
Congratulations, Lori.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Now with COVID on top of it.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Look over here. You guys look over here. Thank you. Thank you.
You have to get a chance to speak too.
I know. I will. Maker.
There you go. Talk about good people.
Honestly, I'm really shocked and surprised at this. I did start in 1985. I left the county in 1996 and came back 3 years ago. This is really a tribute to all of my wonderful employees and staff. And honestly, we could not do this COVID experience without wonderful people. So thank you for this.
Thank you. It's always amazing, you know, during times of adversity, you usually find individuals who shine, and then you find individuals who don't shine, or whatever. And Lori's one of those that's definitely shines, so thank you. Now, you can all stay for the rest of our meeting if you'd like, or maybe not. Whatever you'd like to do.
For 1 second.
Okay. Next on our agenda is public comment. And so there was a request for public comment to be early in our meeting, so we're going to open it up for public comment.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, my name is Bruce Beard. Let me know if you're ready.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the council, the members of the commission. My name, as I said, is Bruce Beard. I'm counsel for Richard Losey, and I'd like to take just a few minutes to talk with you about the status of the Bridal Veil Falls project. You'll pardon me if I look down a little bit because I'm looking at my notes to make sure I say everything right. As you know, Mr. Losey made an offer to purchase or lease a small part of the Bridal Veil Falls property to build a public-private tram and some small incidental uses. Somehow that spun into a horrible set of falsehoods and untruths about Mr. Losey, about his business, about his proposals. He's not a developer. Mr. Losey is a concerned citizen who wanted to do good for the county and for the members of the county. I'm not quite sure how a developer has become such a word, since almost all of us live, work, play, and recreate in facilities built by developers, homes and shopping centers and everything else, offices. But somehow it's become a horrible word. But Richard isn't a developer. He's a concerned citizen, as I say. Let me be clear. Richard Losey strongly supports the potential monument proposal now being considered by the legislature. He believes that that would be a good idea for Bridal Veil Falls. It would help Bridal Veil Falls. It would help the public. He is a strong supporter of that. He has frankly always supported public availability of the falls. That's what was so frustrating in this entire process. It was proposed as, it was portrayed as somebody trying to close off the falls from the public. It is absolutely, couldn't be farther from the truth. In fact, Mr. Losey's proposal to build the tram would have opened the falls for viewing for more members of the public. It would have been done that. Would have restored the tram that's been there for about 50 years. It would have done it in an environmentally safe and helpful way with no environmental damage. The problem here was the process. The process was, to put it bluntly, an ambush. It was an ambush where certain screaming people told falsehoods and mistruths. That opening statement was by the leading proponent or opponent of the tram was simply absurd and attacking Commissioner Lee, just simply making innumerable falsehoods. And those falsehoods were harmful. Mr. Losey's been receiving threats to his person and his business. That's not how American political debate should occur. We should have had a time for reasonable consideration of the proposal. I'm convinced, and Mr. Losey's convinced, that if we'd had a chance to do a reasonable explanation of what his proposal was, a fair and honest debate, as opposed to screaming and half-truths from members of the public, that the people would have realized that the vast majority of Utah County residents would have been better off with Mr. Losey's proposal. This should not be government of the loudest, for the loudest, and by the loudest. You need to recognize that when 5 or 10 or 20 people show up screaming, that means 700,000 people in Utah County haven't showed up. It's impossible to judge what the people want to hear based off of the screaming people. Now, let me be clear. Richard has, let me turn my notes over. We are convinced that the lawsuit that we filed was correct, that the process the county filed was incorrect, that the county didn't give appropriate notice, didn't consider appropriate value, didn't recognize the source of the funds being from a limited restricted account. But that having been said, with the monument proposal now in place, hopefully with the legislature, which Richard will do whatever he can to support, Richard has come to the decision, and we have already dismissed the lawsuit. Richard has no present intention of moving forward with the lawsuit. We've dropped it, and we intend to support the monument proposal and do what we can to help it pass. We intend to hope that the process is good so that the county spends money developing and the state just spends money helping to make Bridal Veil Falls better. I'd note that Richard's proposal would have provided a lot of money for the county to help make Bridal Veil Falls better, to make other properties better. The county would have been made whole for what it paid for Bridal Veil Falls with no diminution of value. But again, that having been said, we've dismissed the lawsuit. We support the monument process, and we thank you for your time and consideration today. And we hope in the going forward basis that process is looked into so that we don't have those kind of ambush screaming hearings with half-truths, mistruths, and simple personal attacks like on Commissioner Lee and others, for example, and Mr. Losey that were unwarranted and untrue. Again, thank you for your time, and if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I look forward to having you have a great meeting, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that public comment. Any other public comments since we're open for that? Any online that you can see, Alice? Okay, we will move then to building our agenda. On our regular agenda, we have 24 items on our agenda. And let's start with items 1 through 10. Just for clarification purposes, all the items that are on our agenda right now, we are going to either, if we pull them off of our agenda, if we pull them off of our agenda, then we will consider them, talk about them, and then make motions to either approve, ratify, or not. If we leave them on, we'll move them to consent, which will mean that all three of the commissioners agree to that. If one commissioner wants to talk about it or pull it off, then we'll do that. So let's look at items 1 through 10. I don't have any on items 1 through 10. Are there any other commissioners that would like to pull off any one of those items?
I would hold 6.
Go ahead, Tanner.
What was that?
Commissioner Lee, could you hear?
What was that number?
Item 6.
6.
6.
Okay. Item number 6.
I'd like to hold number 5 and 10.
Number 5 and number 10. Okay. Let's look at items from 11 to 20. I'd like some clarification on number 16. And then number 20 does need some action. Others.
I'd like some clarity on item 14.
14. Okay. On item number 20, do we want to hold that one? Sometimes we'll table that for after. I just wanted to make sure that we've done it both ways. Which would you prefer?
You know, Commissioner Lee, I could go either way on that as well. maybe I would move that we table item number 20.
Okay, let's leave it as a table then, that'd be fine.
And table would do what again? As
And
opposed to-
table, we'll hold it till after our closed meetings.
Okay.
Okay, let's go to that point then, and we will, we'll deal with items 21 through 24, kind of at the end for setting those meetings. So again, just to reiterate, the only items that we're going to consider and talk about now in the way of having motions to approve or disapprove is items 5, 6, 10, 14, 16, and then item 20 has been tabled for now. So all the rest of the items are going to go on consent as being approved to, declared, adopted, whatever the wording is on their item, for consent by all three commissioners agreeing to. Any questions to that, or any comments on those items that we have moved to consent? If you see any online, let me know too, Alice. Otherwise, with that, let's move to item number 5, which is to approve and authorize the signing of an amendment to Agreement 2020-698 as stated in our number 5 on our regular agenda.
I brought, oh,
Go ahead. I'm here to answer questions.
Okay, I was reading through the amendment agreement, and it says contractor proposal to allow compensation for overruns added during the process, et cetera. And I understand that because things pop up that we don't anticipate. But do we have a percentage that we're defining that overrun limit to be?
I don't know what the exact dollar amount is. The project is complete. This is one of the EWP projects. And you've seen a couple others of these in recent weeks. One of the things that we missed as we were putting these together, typically when we put an agreement like this together, we utilize the line item costs, and then we have some flexibility on if it needs to go up or down on that particular line item. The way these were written is it was a not to exceed amount. And so we're, like on this particular one, it was with Brown Brothers Construction, it was up on the Thistle Debris Basin. The contract was to have them remove 80,000 cubic yards of material. Well, to hit 80,000 right on the money is really hard. And we were slightly over that, 81,000, something like that, I believe. I don't remember the exact amount, but it was within a reasonable amount there that we were within. The money is all pass-through money from NRCS and the state, so it's not costing the county any out of our own budget. And the work is complete, so this makes it so we can make the final payment to Brown Brothers and then get that reimbursement back through NRCS.
So overruns would be roughly then maybe a tenth of a
I
percent.
think
Okay,
we're
it's really minor
we're
then.
under 10%.
Okay, so it's
Yep.
minor amount,
If it
okay.
was 70,000, would they give us a discount?
We would have been under, 'cause it wasn't a lump sum bid,
It was just,
but it was a not to exceed.
okay.
It
So,
was
yep,
780, I think altogether.
the dollar amount,
Yeah.
yeah, it was really minor. This was a $700,000 project, so.
Yeah. Okay, that clarifies that for me.
Okay, if there's not any questions, a motion would be in order.
Then I move, excuse me, I move that we approve item number 5 on today's agenda.
Second.
I got a motion and a second to approve agenda item number 5. All in favor, say aye.
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 That passes 3-0. Number 6 is to approve and authorize the signing of an agreement with Weller Recreation to purchase 2021 Ski-Doo and trailer, I believe is in here too, right?
Yes.
And the Polaris. There's a bunch of things
Trade in
in
a
here.
couple of pieces of equipment and purchase of, is there one or two?
Just one,
Just one, okay.
just one machine.
So I was just wondering, gentlemen, if you could refresh my memory, because I know that we recently had an item on this, which I think was we were able to get them purchased with 2020 funds kind of at the end. There were a couple of others. And so because this just came on so recent after that one, I just want to make sure I understood the differences of those two and really what's going on here and what budgeted funds are being used. So.
Yes, we had Lieutenant Pershawn, Sheriff's Office. We had 5 machines we surplused last year. And, because we got approved to purchase two last year in January, but because of the pricing negotiations, we were able to get three. And then this fall, or this December, we got two more. So we were replacing two 1999s, two 2000s, and a couple 2005s. And so this last trade that we're doing now is gonna replace all those old machines. And so the oldest machines we have now are gonna be 2017 or newer. And so this is just one last machine we need for our total 8. And right now, the pricing for used machines, because the factories had shut down in the past, they're just really having a hard time getting a hold of machines. They're worth about 25% more at least for what they are usually worth. So we're trying to take advantage of that. And then we put a little bit more, and I took that from some AEDs that I budgeted for. That's the monies that we're using to supplement that, I think around 3,000 and 3,125. And so, so we thought, you know, this is a great opportunity to get that last machine upgraded and get rid of all those old machines. And so that's what we've done. So that this is two 2013s we're trading in and a 05.
2005. Okay.
So
So where is this funding coming from?
the funding for that 3,000 it's coming from my budget that I had originally put in for AEDs, defibrillators, and that's where I've used that for. But we're getting the trade-in value of like 9,500 or so. I'm not sure the exact detail.
95.
Yeah.
So what about the AEDs then? We don't need those? Or what, we found some other way, or what?
We have other grants for those, and potentially, mine's been stolen out of my vehicle for Peter for the COVID vaccination sites, and so I think we may be able to do it that direction.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Even with possibly with some of the COVID money is what you're saying.
Yep.
If we do a northern side or anything of that nature, because we almost had to use it here.
Yes. Yeah, just now as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jeez. Okay.
So that's,
Okay.
did that answer your question there? This is just a great opportunity to clean that up and, you know, like I said, doing more with a lot less. And this is one of those situations for me.
So we're trading in two.
Trading in three.
Trading in three?
Trading in three
To get that credit?
to get that credit for, and then adding 3,000 for one machine. Yep.
Okay.
And they had to bring that machine in from out of state to find. I mean, they're not out there. So help us not deploy, you know, trying to rescue someone with an old machine.
So the question is this then, on those two, since we're getting rid of three, I mean, the one, obviously you're getting a new one. Are we gonna be down then on the two
We'll be
in the future?
we'll be perfect at 8. That's what we have. I have 4 teams of 2.
Okay,
It's kind of the model. And going forward is, you know, if you get a new set every couple years, you at least have 2 machines that can get to where these people are riding to break trail.
okay.
But, and then rotate them so they're not breaking down on a call kind of
So
thing.
you're rotating stock, basically. Okay.
Yeah. But it's been a long time, so we're really grateful we're able to get those 2, actually, you know, 5 last year, 3 in January and 2 in December. And January was also a buy 3 for 2 kind of deal that I was able to work. So we like those kind of situations.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I would move that we approve agenda item number 6.
I would second approving item number 6.
I've got a motion and a second to approve agenda item number 6. All in favor, say aye.
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 That passes 3-0. Number 10 is to authorize a temporary increase in the staffing plan for 2 full-time career service grant-funded health education 2 positions. Is anybody here to speak to that? Ralph, do you want to speak to that? Do you know enough about it to?
There's been a lot going on. I brought it up, Ralph, only because I just want to assure that this temporary increase ends when the grant funding date ends.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
That's, I just want to confirm that on
Yeah,
this.
that's a really good question. These are, specifically asked for by Eric to make sure that they can, continue with the work they're doing, obviously, here on the Provo site. And they will be offered in a way where they'll have an end date, based upon the grant funding. So,
And is this part of the COVID
It is.
support? Okay,
It is.
so is it COVID funded or just a separate grant?
it's actually, separate funding
Okay.
for, for the health department that they get from the state of Utah.
That was pretty much my biggest question.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions? If there's not, motion?
I make a motion that we approve item number 10.
Second?
We got a motion and a second to approve agenda item number 10. All in favor, say aye.
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 That passes 3-0. Number 14 is to adopt a resolution declaring Utah County personal property as surplus and awarding it to the said property as a gift.
I brought that up to the Lieutenant Pershon when he was here a moment ago. He just left. He told me that, unless I'm misunderstanding, that maybe someone else could speak to, but that is supposed to represent a career duty weapon. That's the personal property item that they're referring to. And so I was just concerned that the difference of the two, what do they mean by personal property, which is an open-ended.
So it's the one that they used, as my understanding. It's not like a new one. It's the one that they used in service.
It's the one that they've been carrying and using.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's the same one as items 13 and, or excuse me, 12 and 13 then, okay. Well, with that, I just make a motion that we approve item number 14.
Second?
We got a motion and a second to adopt the resolution as stated in number 14. All in favor, say aye.
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 That passes 3-0. Number 15 is to approve and authorize the signing of an agreement with the Neville School District, replacing the agreement as stated 2020-10090. This is the one that I held. The only question I have in here is it talks about $40,000. And I do not see any spot where any line item where this is coming out of. On the agenda, there's no line item of where this money's potentially, and I think it might be up to the 40,000. So, but I just don't see a line item in there on where.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Dave. This is Ben Benoit. I don't have an answer to that question. As to the funding, I don't know if Dave, you do, the clerk auditor's office might be able to assist with that. I apologize.
I'm fine with it. It's just that I just don't see where the funding, and I'd like to, have it on there as.
And I don't know the answer to that either. I don't know the source.
Okay.
This is for substance abuse. Is that right?
Correct.
I guess that's a
Substance
health
abuse
department.
prevention.
I'm guessing that's either a health department, perhaps a grant source, or is that something done in conjunction with DDAPT?
This is Rob.
It is the prevention on the prevention side, so it is the health department.
So this is Rob Moore. Real quick, looks like this agreement was already approved in 2020, and so it's an existing contract. And all this is doing is modifying a provision in that contract, the governmental immunity provision of that contract, nothing else. So I think this is already.
That's right.
So this is already.
Neville School District
existing
wanted to change
contract.
one thing.
So what you're saying is we already have the line item in the original contract in which this is coming out, and this is just modifying. So
A different provision, correct. This is not modifying the 40,000. That's already been approved in 2020.
Got it.
This is just modifying
Okay.
a provision of the contract. At least that's the way I read it as I'm looking at it right now.
Okay.
That's correct.
Well, if that's correct, then I have no problem. I mean, I didn't have any problem with, all I want to know is make sure what line it was coming from. And if that's secured through the original contract, then I don't have any further questions with it. Is there any other questions? All right, a motion to be in order then?
I'll make a motion that we approve item number 16.
Second?
Get a motion and a second to approve agenda item 16. All in favor say aye.
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 That passes 3-0. We tabled item 20. I have that we need item 21, 22, and 24.
Correct.
I move that we strike item number 23.
You okay with that?
Yes. I second that motion.
I got a motion and a second to strike agenda item number 23. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
That passes 3-0.
I move that we set a time, date, and location for closed meetings as set forth in 21, 22, and 24 for immediately following this meeting.
I second the motion.
I got a motion and a second to set the closed meeting items 21, 22, and 24 for this date time after our meeting. All in favor say aye.
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 That passes 3-0. Okay, we do have one work session item. And I believe, Lisa, are you doing the presentation on this? Oh, I just see your name on here. Who's doing the presentation on this, Commissioner? Oh, Dave is? Okay.
Are we talking about the work session?
Work session,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Dave Shawcroft here. I was asked just to kind of introduce the topic and the legal process that you'd follow in the event that you did want to separate the clerk and the auditor positions in Utah County. There's a state code provision dealing with this, section 17-16-3, and the applicable part of that section specifies that the legislative body, this body, would need to adopt an ordinance separating those two offices. That would need to be adopted before February 1st of the year when that election would occur. So basically, you have until February 1st of next year to adopt an ordinance to do that if you desire to do so. And then those two would be separated in time for people to file for those two offices, and then have the election during next year, and then the following January, they would take office. So that's the legal process. Obviously, there would take some work to separate the duties, which are together now, and I don't know how much work that would entail, but it would take some effort to review the consolidated status of the offices now and just go through and separate those duties which are specific to the clerk auditor. Separate the two so the auditor has the auditor's duties and the clerk duties. But as far as the legal process, it's just to adopt that ordinance before February 1st of next year if you want it to be in effect for the next election cycle. Any questions on that? Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Ralph Barnes, Human Resources. I think that Alice has a PowerPoint for me. Brian has a PowerPoint. It's short, don't worry. Oh, thank you.
Sorry, is this still the same work session?
It is.
Okay, great.
So this is Utah counties' current scenario for, clerk auditor. From the largest to the smallest counties. And what kind of stands out here is about, 3/4 of the clerk auditor offices are actually combined in the state of Utah. A handful are not, as you can see in the salmon and blue columns. The correlation between office and county size and workload and pay is weak. There is some correlation, but it's not strong. You can see from the pay rates that it's a little bit all over the place, but there is essentially a correlation between the largest county and the smallest county in the pay. But I think, again, what is most interesting to me is that, the majority of the offices are actually combined. Any questions about this, comments, anything that stands out?
Well, I mean, it's surprising to me that there is no correlation because you have the smallest county in the state that has them separated and the largest county in the state that has them separated. And then it's just
Right.
hit and miss as you go down through.
Yeah, as far as the separation, there's no correlation. You're
Yeah.
right. The pay, there's a slight, correlation. It's like, 0.8, which is actually a fairly strong correlation. In other words, smaller counties pay less, larger counties pay more. But you're right, as far as I can't really see a scheme or rationale for why some are splitting and some are not. And I really think at the end of the day, the why of why we would want to do this is the most important question. And I don't have that answer, but it's just what really needs to be considered. Why does Utah County want to remain as combined, or why does Utah County want to split? Is it a workload question? Is it a compliance question? Is it, I actually don't know the answers to those questions. So, anything else?
Has anyone done any analysis? I mean, I don't know if this is a proposal at this point, but has anyone looked at the cost?
Yes.
That, to create two separate offices?
Yes, that's my last slide.
On this slide, when did Salt Lake County decide to split? Do you know?
I don't know when I can find out, but I don't know when they split. But yeah, I find it interesting. When you look at this data, that's the first thing I would ask is why? Next slide, please. Okay, so this is just a really high-level overview of the staffing in the current, clerk auditor department. I really just wanted you to see a snapshot of the amount of employees and the functions. Again, there's not a huge, correlation between a number of employees and workload when you relate to the salary of an elected official, but there's a lot going on in the clerk auditor's department. I would say that it's busy. There's a lot of staff. There's a lot of functions happening. And I just wanted you to see this, that it's, you could make the argument that it's large enough that if that's the reason why to split it, that might be a valuable argument. Any questions about this? Now, there are a lot of, time-limited employees, especially on the election side, but they're still having to manage those people. Okay, any questions? Let's get down to the nitty-gritty. So, assuming status quo as far as salaries, and of course we've talked about the potential need to increase elected official salaries at some point in the future, but using an assumption that that's not going to happen right away, just to replace the leadership or to add the leadership for a second office is about $400,000, and that's annually. If you add on possible effects to staff, supporting staff, and the reason why there are these effects to staff is because a lot of the staff currently share roles between offices. There's staff in tax admin that also handle services in the public services realm. So if there was a true split and you really didn't want to have, you know, the crossover, it could be in the worst case scenario about $661,000. But it all depends on how you want to approach this. Of course, the top section really is the root of what you'd be adding to just add the second office. And it could be the clerk or the auditor. It really doesn't matter. Either way, it's going to be about the same. So with these numbers, any questions, anything that you'd like me to highlight?
The chief deputy, we have that position in place now, though, right?
Correct.
For both clerk and the auditor.
That is correct. Well,
But one is vacant, I think, but
no. Yeah, he's shared between, you know,
Okay.
both offices currently.
To me, this chart is an interesting one. I mean, $400,000 a year. That's probably all that I need to see to know that. I would be asking the question of, can we combine another position rather than do we want to separate any positions? The other thing is, you know, as it kind of goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think it's even worse. If it's recently been fixed, don't try to break it. I think that Amelia Powers Gardner is one of the most innovative elected officials and leaders that we have in the county, and has spent the last 2 years turning around this department and is incredibly effective. And rather than spending $400,000 to, you know, separate, you know, I think I proposed at the end of last year a $10,000 increase in the clerk auditor's salary. That's something I would still support. It would save a lot of money, and we would have the leadership of Amelia. That's probably where I would land on this topic.
Okay, anything else for me on this slide? That's all I have to present.
may I, could you send us those slides?
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll send that over to you. Okay, Amelia.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. For the record, I'm Amelia Powers Gardner, the Clerk Auditor. You know, Alice likes us to state our name, so you're welcome. I think I'll speak to the process of separating them. I think the lower number, the 661, is probably closer to accurate on what the cost for salary and benefits would be. Obviously, the top line, the roughly 400,000, that would just be for the elected official, the chief deputy, and the confidential assistant. But as Ralph noted, we do have several areas of the office that we've combined functions that work together. And so for salary and benefits, to truly separate these, the bottom is more in line with what that increase would be. Because we do have like our tax admin division under the wages, if you saw the tax admin supervisor actually also supervises the entirety of the marriage license and passport staff. So there would be an additional supervisor that would need to be added in a few things. So 661 is probably closer for salary and benefits. Let me put my auditor hat on real quick. And the salary and benefits is only a fraction of that. At that point, once we have double the people, we want to look at the cost of IT, the footprint in the building, and all those support services. And so those wouldn't be too terribly much. Obviously, about 70% of the cost of the staff is going to be salary and benefits, but I would feel comfortable taking that 661 number and considering that at about 70% of what the total cost would be. So probably just shy of about $1 million after we've added on the IT costs, additional office space for having multiple people and that sort of thing. Now, with that said, $1 million, if it brings more efficiency and effectivity to the county, could be worth it if that means that we get a lot more efficiency out of this. So speaking not just as the auditor on the outside looking in, but as the clerk auditor doing this function, what I would look at is I recognize that we in Utah County are one of the fastest growing counties in the nation. And as we continue to grow at an exponential rate, to think that 10 years from now, we should continue to have this office combined. I could see that getting more and more difficult as our county grows. But I think a way to do this without, to use the metaphor of Velcro, like we have this strip of Velcro, and instead of tearing this Velcro apart quickly as we go and trying to separate those clerk and auditor functions, if this is something that we want to do, I think we could set a glide path. So for the next 2 years, my office will be working very heavily on trying to bring innovation and updated procedures and policies to the auditor side of the business. Having to put that on hold in order to separate these two, I think would kind of be a heavy lift for the people. Getting the marriage license and passports and abatements and BOE team separated would be a little more difficult. But if we set this as a goal for the county, and as we start looking at our strategic goals, I know with our Director of Financial Services, we're going to set financial goals for the county and then we'll also start looking at multi-year budget cycling. And if we can set this on a glide path, then for example, as the county grows and as we get, for example, we get more people that are applying for BOE and abatements on that auditor side of the house, that we look at then having 2 team leads as we bring on more staff, an auditor side of the house team lead and a clerk side of the house team lead. So that instead of having one supervisor that looks over that whole staff, as we grow, we start separating that staff. I think as far as the logistics of separating these 2 offices, to do so for the 2022 election, that basically would give us about a year and a half to get that done. I think that might be a heavy lift. And I also think it would add almost $1 million to our budget that right now isn't necessary. However, with the county growing at this rate, if this is something that the commission wanted to consider, and I got asked this a lot when I was running for office, I think it would make sense to set a glide path. And then as we grow in this department, recognize that when we assign new duties and as we review job descriptions, we do so over the next 4 to 6 years with the eye of knowing that as we review job descriptions with HR, as a natural process, we're starting to separate those clerk and auditor functions. So that when the time comes, instead of looking at the bottom number, we're just looking at the top number, because the bottom number naturally through progression has occurred. Do you guys have any questions for me or thoughts on that?
No, it's interesting because this comes up all the time. I mean, whenever you're running, there's that question that comes up.
Absolutely.
And a lot of it comes down to a budget, budget perspective, but it's not always, a budget perspective, because there's the other side to it. And I'd be curious to know why the others split. What was what happened to make them split like that?
I do
and
know
go that
some
way?
of them, it was personality of the person holding the job.
Yeah, which I always think is pretty poor policy, because that is never going to be consistent for a long-term
Right.
viability for any organization.
You've seen it in especially in some of the more rural counties. You've seen them split it depending on who the personality has the job is, and then somebody else comes in and then they recombine it, and you kind of see this going on.
And that's terrible.
I agree. I
It's
think it
terrible
makes more
policy.
sense to set a plan and a target and then work towards that plan and towards that target. I agree wholeheartedly. I think anytime we set policy, whether it's legislation or structure of government based on personality, I don't favor that in any way.
And heaven knows that I'm not necessarily one that wants to follow what Salt Lake County does.
Right.
So
Well, and the
that's a
other part of
given.
this that's interesting is
But
that
I still think, there are some advantages that you hear in the public all the time with a separation, because with the clerk side, with the auditor side, you have the auditor who is supposed to be auditing the entire county, but yet it's underneath the clerk, which on a financial basis, the auditor should be objective to auditing the financial dealings that are going on with the county. And maybe that's where some of the rub came into the past, when you have an issue that comes up and all of a sudden it flares into some sort of fraud, I'm guessing.
Right.
It flares into some sort of fraud, and they think, oh my goodness, we've got to separate these so that we can have different eyes that look at it. I don't see that with us, but
Right,
still.
and we do, and unlike some counties, we have an outside auditor that comes in and audits my department every year because we have the financials in-house. So we do have an outside auditor that comes in and takes care of that, and we pay that outside auditor a lot less than it would cost to split the positions. The other aspect
But that
that is
outside
interesting,
auditor is just on compliance for
right, rather
finance.
than
It's not-
performance,
Yes,
right?
yes.
True. And in some other counties, I could see that being an issue. I'm not too concerned about our performance. We tend to be probably one of the most transparent clerk's offices in the state, if not the most transparent. And so the public and the media, they do a de facto audit on a regular basis, right? Because I am so transparent. But if I wasn't as transparent, like you say, maybe in some of the other counties where they're covering windows instead of cutting them in the walls to let people see what they're doing, I could see that being.
What? You mean they do that?
One other thing to note is that the auxiliary organizations that exist for elected officials, for the clerk auditor, it is combined. There isn't a clerks association and an auditors association. It is actually a clerk auditors association. And so there's one association and they cover all of the topics.
Yeah. And so, you know, I mean, this is, like I said, this is a conversation that's come up. I'm glad, Tom, that you put it on there for us to have this conversation, look at it. This is the first time I've looked at the numbers, you know, on it. It was always kind of speculative what that means. So it does, you know, bring to light at least, you know, some of the things that we're seeing on there. I'm not a fan of growing government. I don't want to be on that side of it, but I am a fan of being, you know, transparent and responsible and making sure that the public sees, you know, what's going on in government. And so, I mean, that's the dilemma that we're in, is we're trying to find that balance, not on a personality basis or anything else.
Well, and that's why I say if we set a glide path, then you know it's not personality based, right? If you set, for example, a glide path for 2026 or 2030 for when it comes up on the ballot in one of those years, then it's not personality based, then it's just sheer, as the county grows, as the departments grow, then we can naturally, through attrition, go through and realign job responsibilities and duties to be separate.
Now, you said on the ballot, you're not talking about a voter to the people for the vote.
No, I'm
This
talking
is-
about when they would be elected.
Oh, I see, okay, I
Right.
got it.
Because that's when, that's the cycle that the clerk auditor is
Right.
up, would be 2022, 2026, 2030. So it's the off years of presidential elections, because the clerk auditor needs to be hyper-focused in presidential elections, so in those off years. So if you set a year like that, and we did this during our multi-year budget cycling, and as we set that as a goal, that would give us time to do it through the process, through attrition, without too much pain to the HR department, the legal department, the clerk auditor's department, and it wouldn't be personality based. So if you're looking at doing it, I think that makes good, reasonable sense.
Another thing that I learned, you know, in reviewing some of the training from the state auditor's office is that we actually have a lot of flexibility in the audit function. And so it's not like you need a separate independent elected auditor and then to make a bunch of changes in that audit silo. Really, right now in Amelia's office, she could choose to exchange with other auditors in other counties to come in and do audit functions. They could outsource an outside kind of consultant to do audit work, right? And so there's other ways to achieve that independence of the departments, of every aspect of a department, without having to bloat government with another $600,000.
Yeah, we can ask the state auditor's office to come in and do an audit. We could, like you say, we could swap with another county. We've got several options to make sure that we're maintaining that.
Yeah, I brought this up. I asked our legal defense, our legal counsel, and HR, and I asked the current auditor to just come in to present this, at least begin a dialogue to start considering what should be the next steps, when. And that was what this was all about, was to find out, as an initial discussion, what should we look toward? And as we move forward, we'll begin to identify certain points along the calendar path as to when we should do this or do that to match the demand from the public.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the biggest thing there. And we might learn something from Salt Lake County on a positive note on this. I don't know. We'll see.
Right, as we start heading towards a county of the first class in size, it makes sense.
Yes.
Don't see
I think
that
we've
right
still
now.
got a few years before we're
Yeah.
there.
And this whole discussion has been very, very helpful for me, so I appreciate Dave and Ralph and you, Amelia, for coming and doing this.
Absolutely.
Give me a perspective, because we've talked
I-
about this. And I just want to.
I don't think we want to be like Salt Lake County government. And, you know, I think that we should probably look at combining. I mean, maybe there's a couple other roles that we could combine to save taxpayer dollars. I think that would be a more productive work session than trying to separate something that would cost the county more government and make it look more like Salt Lake County.
Well, I mean, it's a conversation, and obviously, I know, Tom, you went through a campaign in which people are talking, and they talk about this, and so I'm glad that we have these kind of conversations, you know, to bring them up and talk about them. I do know that I was alerted that somebody online asked a question, and this is a work session, so if people have questions or they'd like to talk, they can. Alice, there was somebody that submitted a question. Would you like to read it?
Okay, this was submitted by Martha Rasmussen. I cannot make the meeting discussing if the clerk auditor department should be separated into two departments, but I did have some questions and comments. First, what about the costs? As far as I can tell, this would create two new positions, the elected official and deputy, with salaries over 6 figures, plus additional support staff. The last I heard, the county was already struggling to meet their budget, so why add an expense to it right now? Commissioner Lee has stated he wants to reduce expenses and keep government small, and adding a department won't help with that. Commissioner Sakovic campaigned on reducing expenses, so I'm surprised he's supporting it. Are the commissioners going to raise taxes again, or do they have another plan? Second, why now? I'm concerned about the timing of this, forcing an appointed position. We have another election cycle coming up soon. Why does the department needs to be split sooner than the public can elect a department head of their choosing? I'm afraid the timing is due to something else, like a political favor for an appointed position. I recommend waiting to split the department until a department head can be duly elected instead of appointed, whether it be in the coming election cycle or the one after that. I do feel that the time is coming when the clerk auditor office will need to be separated to better handle the demands on the office and serve the public, but not now. While I have no problems discussing this as a hypothetical for the semi-near future, I don't think this is the time to actually split the department, both because of cost and election timing. Thank you.
Commissioners, if I could add a couple thoughts. We've thought a lot about this, obviously, how we can best serve the county and the public in our department. And as we've, Amelia and I have worked together for the last 2 years to kind of identify the challenges. One of the things that sort of occurred to us as we first came in and as people talked about the idea of splitting the office is really bandwidth. And we've talked about this over and over and over again. And I think that we've sought to really solve the bandwidth issue by better professionalizing the office, organizing the office in such a way that we have the right people in the right roles. One example, recently, as we've brought in a director of financial services from more of a professional side rather than sort of a political side. That's not an elected position. It's not a politically appointed position. It's a professional senior level accountant. We're very fortunate the person we were able to hire comes with, vast amount of local government experience, having served as the county treasurer in another county, and then, a state auditing role for local government. So we're really fortunate as a county to have that new director of financial services. But it's a good example of how we've sought to actually increase the professional competence and abilities that the office can provide to the county by having the right people. We were able to separate the budget function from the finance statement function, where previously Deneen was doing both of those roles. We now have a budget manager that can focus on budget year round, helping us to get budgets prepared much sooner. And then Deneen oversees the accounting function and the annual finance statements. So I think what we've sought to do do is identify how we can sort of professionalize the office, increase the ability of our department to serve the county efficiently and effectively without having to maybe add an additional layer of political oversight. And then that's kind of an interesting concept as you think about the right type of individual to serve in various functions. I think it's important to have elected oversight in local government. Counties are unique, though, in that we elect all of these various department heads. Rather than a city where you might elect a mayor and a council, we then also elect a variety of other functions. And it's important that we do so for some reasons, but UAC recently had kind of an internal debate about this, as some rural counties wanted the legislature to actually turn some elected officials into appointed officials. So, the idea being that if you're in a small rural county, can you find somebody who is professionally credentialed and experienced to serve in certain types of roles versus somebody just sort of runs and gets elected to be in that role. And so that bill didn't pass, but a couple of years ago, you might recall there was discussion about that. And I think that's relevant here. What we've sought to do really is to bring in credentialed professionals at a senior accounting level to really do the functions of the office well. I think as you move forward considering this option, it would be helpful to talk to some of these other counties and get a sense of why they've combined or why they've split, what the pros and cons are that they see. I don't really know. We haven't been as engaged in UAC as a county the last couple of years, and so I couldn't tell you what some of our colleagues would have to say about it, but I think it'd be interesting to see their perspective, see if UAC's done any discussion about that. So I think that's just something to consider as well.
Yeah, to Josh's point, I think when I was elected, we didn't have a single CPA in the auditor's office, and now we have 4. And that's a huge credit and tribute to you, the commission, because you gave us the resources to do that. And so when I ran for office 2 years ago, professional competency was something that the county we were light on. The people we had were amazing, but we just didn't have a lot of it. And so it made sense then to talk about splitting this so that there was more bandwidth. But you guys have done a phenomenal job of giving the bandwidth and allowing us to put, as Josh said, professionals rather than politicians in these positions. We now have 4 CPAs in the auditor's office. And I think that bandwidth is correct. I think it's right. I think we're on a good trajectory for the next few years.
And real quick, this is why I brought this particular item up for this work session, because I wanted to have a feel, where are we and where are we going to go? And if we were to do this, when would be the best time and what the conditions might be? And it wasn't certainly not to take action now, but it was simply have a initial dialogue and discussion of what's involved and what conditions should we anticipate before we were even considering this.
Right.
There's I'll state this, and it's just a philosophical, talking about that bill and so forth. I fundamentally have a problem with being governed by experts. I think that is a very slippery slope. It has a certain amount of elitism to it. We've always said let's have members. Governed is different than, in the sense, than actually working in government with experts. I want to make sure and separate those
right,
two.
Absolutely.
There's separation on that. And so I've always fundamentally had a problem with this. We got to have a certain type of person, or a certain degree, or a certain professionalism, or whatever, because that's not who's made us. That's not who we are. We're full of all different types and different thoughts and different backgrounds, and being a representative is a reflection of the people, not necessarily a certain type or a certain education background. To do that. So I'm glad that, that one bill that Josh talked about there, it goes down a path that is very scary in my opinion, because we get this elitism, this everyone has to fit this criteria, or else you can't do this.
Yeah, I appreciate that so much. Obviously, having run for this office, I can't tell you how many times I heard people say, well, you don't have a CPA, how can you do this?
Right.
And I would explain to them, I'm an engineer. I get numbers.
Right.
But this office is more about leadership and process.
You have originality.
Right, and we have
capacity.
vision,
Yeah, right.
leadership, and a detail to process.
Yeah.
Just like you said, I didn't have a CPA background, but that doesn't mean I'm not qualified to be the county auditor. In fact, we've made a lot of progress under my tenure because of the professionals that we've brought in.
Yeah. I mean, we're probably quite a ways away from the original conversation.
But I thank you for your support.
But it does, lend into the conversation. And I'm not afraid of these conversations. I'm glad that it was brought up for the conversation. It is one that is out there in the public sphere, that is being asked on a pretty regular basis.
And I think a work session is the perfect place to bring it up because the question's being asked.
Yeah.
It gives us the ability to analyze it and then discuss it in a public forum. So I think this was perfect.
Absolutely.
Well, you did well, all three of you did, but thank you.
Thank you.
I got to ask, Alice, are there any other online that are wanting to make a comment to it? Just to make sure. If you're online, you want to put your hand up or. You want to make a comment? Yes. Okay, it looks like we've got one more in the room, and then we'll move from this item.
Thank you. I'm Lisa Shepard. I'm Commissioner Sakovich's Senior Policy Advisor, and put this on the work session agenda on behalf of the Commissioner. I just wanted to make a comment in response to Margaret Rasmussen's comment. Right now is not the time, just to clarify, this isn't we're trying to do something in between election cycle, like so that we appoint somebody at this point in time. I think she might have misunderstood when someone was talking about appointed positions, meaning like the deputy clerk would be, or the deputy auditor would be an appointed position. But this actually is something that would be just previous to an election year so that it would be effective then. So it's not, Ms. Rasmussen, there we go. It is not about doing something between to appoint anyone or that there's any type of favors or anything like that. It's just a question that needed to come before the commission and have the dialogue.
Thank you. Okay. We will end the work session. Also, to have a mind blank, we don't usually have to come out of that. We're just in and out, right? We don't have to have a motion to come out of work session? Okay. I just had this all of a sudden mind blank if we needed to or not. All right. With that, are there any general public comments, either here or online? If you're online, you can raise your hand again or signal to Alice. Seeing none? Okay. We'll move into our closed meetings. Thank you.